to live fully.
Yeah.
And Henrik, that burden that people, know that the inauthentic life carries with it a great responsibility of constant renewing of yourself every day, a more healthy choice mechanism. They don't want to carry that. And so they inherit then, by choosing the inauthentic life, you bring in the New World Order, you bring in clustering, you bring in denial, violence, projection. So, like I was talking about in that Future of Mankind talk in Los Angeles, once you choose subconsciously the inauthentic life, then you bring into existence the whole matrix of the lie that you see in front of you. And you bring in the media, as you've been saying, to create this. And also what the media do, we have to understand, is that, remember, one of the other things that they do is to traumatize you into making these wrong decisions.
Yeah.
And the media is the main generator through the news and other means of creating this traumatization. There's a quote that I used in the talk, and it said, when faced with a life-threatening situation, the reptilian hindbrain, the most primitive part of the human brain, switches off all activity except that which keeps you alive. It sends us the subconscious message, do not move, breathe, or blink, or you will be seen and attacked. All right? And this comes from the book Being Human by Sohilan and Alicia Thurn. And this is beautifully stated that when man is living in his lower chakras, in his inauthentic state, when he is now a creature of the limbic drives, then it is very easy for the whip crackers and the masters to constantly keep you in a state of fear and trauma so that you remain there.
Yeah. And, to kind of, I guess, evolve from this, as Nietzsche said there, are we faced with this? Is that our only option, so to speak, to constantly try to, I guess, in that sense, improve on ourselves and try harder to get to know ourselves and stuff like this, or where do we kind of end up? What should we do here? That's also
well, we'll get to solutions in a minute. The solutions are very, very important because that's what my work is all about. It's not just pointing out the problem, but getting to an understanding of what the solutions are. But first I want people to really get into this apophatic, type of mindset where they observe what is before that they start meditating on the metaphysical abstractia of what is not. People have to discover what is. What is the reality that is in front of them? Why do we live in this collective anonymity and this, ubiquitous extroversion? Somewhere along the line, you remember when I was talking originally in the Atlantis book about the traumas, the earth traumas and the war of the gods, creating the ego?
Sure.
And the birth of the ego, we also talk about that in the web stream. We developed this sense of interior life from that trauma. Do you know that before the trauma, before the birth of the ego, there was no living inside your own head. There was no idea of a individual subjective consciousness within yourself. You lived entirely what we might want to call externally now, but you lived in nature. Your mind was nature, and therefore you could never go wrong because nature was your brain. The trauma so neuroticized man that he not only had the formation of his ego, but he formed this divisive self where you have somebody within your brain, somebody within your head, the you, so-called, and you have this external body, physical body. You divided yourself off from the body, and you divided yourself off from nature. So the primal division is 50,000 years or so old. Man did not live inside his own head, and this state of living inside your own head as an individualized concept is the reason for the existential trauma. See, animals don't think about thinking. Animals don't consciously think about their own thought processes. The animal does not think, oh, am I depressed today? Let me think about that. You see? And neither did human beings at one point.
Yeah.
But we can't even really describe that state because we're not in that state now. We're in a divided state in which everybody has their own mental furniture. Everybody has their own mental, complexes inside that are just like disheveled furniture thrown inside. You may present a nice, garden, and you may paint your door and your windowsills for the outsiders to think, oh, what a lovely house. But if you were to go inside that person's house, meaning if you were able to see their inner landscape, you wouldn't believe the havoc. It would be like somebody in Alice in Wonderland, You go inside the house, and everything's topsy-turvy, everything's wonky. All the furniture just piled up on top of each other, people living like in a warehouse with boxes and boxes and boxes of junk over their head, ready to crush them. And the insane people are those people that the whole mess has fallen down on their heads, and they are crushed. But most people are pretty unsane. If they're not insane, they're in a toxic situation, living in the dark, full of cobwebs and, wonky furniture, like a sort of a funny farm, something you go and buy at Toys R Us, all this wonky furniture for kids.
Yeah.
But that's what most people's mental architecture is, man, regardless of the outside.
Yeah.
And some of the people at the top of the political spectrum, they're in the worst neurotic state than anybody else, and they're in the lead. They're in control.
And what of the outsider, then, in all of this?
Well, the outsider is the one who obviously, his dynamic is very interesting because he doesn't have this ubiquitous extroversion. He's a person who is inner-directed, not outer-directed. Like we said, once you give up the right rulership of the self and once you give up the authentic life, you then are absolutely dependent on, you're not a rebel, you're a conformist. You're dependent then on what George Bush and Blair say.
Yeah.
You're dependent on what society creates. You're dependent on what the corporation penthouse guys are going to create for you. And they bring in more order, more cameras, more surveillance, more security, more this, more that, more handrails, more. It's like a building that's going to be condemned.
Yeah.
That has to have the scaffolding put on it. It's like a rotten tooth. Every time you touch it, it's agonizing and it's wobbly. Well, the inauthentic man lives in a tower. Let's say he lives in this Tower of Babylon, this ivory tower that's constantly wobbling because it wasn't built on a straight foundation, Henrik. So no matter what wind comes, you see the tower is always precariously moving back and forth and to and fro. It's very frightening to live in the realm of the ego. Because no matter what addition you put, or how you maneuver the furniture, or how many more tiers you build onto that, or how much embellishment, the tower itself is teetering. And we are in that period now in the whole of civilization is teetering. But the outsider is a person, for one of many, many reasons, who will not medicate himself, who will not run into this, and who has chosen or has been guided by his higher guides, because he's actually in touch with his higher guides, to live an authentic life. And I believe that, through the divination arts, the work that I do, the turning on to astrology and to tarot and to these mirrors that show you the self, these are assisting people to get in touch. Subjects of numerology, you see, looking into the mirrors, looking into to discover who and what we are through the pristine mirrors of our forefathers. Whatever way that you come upon the authentic life, this is a person who, by definition, does not have the immense guilt complex that others do. Because remember, we said that the guilt complex comes out of living an inauthentic life. So if you're living an authentic life, you don't have a guilt complex, or you have a much lesser one. And therefore, if you don't have a guilt complex, you're then you're a person who doesn't have a lot of these other, epidemics, these other diseases that, as I said, come off of this hideous genealogical inverted tree of life that, come from. Now, that doesn't mean that you live in happiness, or you're this very, very supreme, you have great joy, because you're a person who's tuned into the matrix, the higher form. You're tuned in, you're being guided by your higher guides. But you suffer. The outsider, Henrik, is one who suffers for other people. His problem comes from his empathy with those who are in the sleep. So to understand this person, he may not be necrotic or neurotic, but unfortunately his trouble, and if you get onto my blog, you keep seeing what I would consider outsiders commenting on my blog about the lives that they have to live and how difficult it is to share with their